Acquired immunity to COVID-19 is now thrown into doubt after 2 people in Europe are confirmed to have been reinfected by the virus. They're in Belgium and the Netherlands. A state of emergency in Wisconsin, brace for a 3rd night of unrest over the multiple shooting of an unarmed black man by police. Meanwhile, Jacob Blake, the victim, is reportedly paralysed. Lionel Messi has told Barcelona he wants to leave the club. The 6-time and current holder of the Ballon d'Or wants to activate a clause that allows him to terminate and leave as a free agent. Thank you for joining us. 2 patients in Europe have been confirmed as reinfected with COVID-19. Doctors say this raises huge doubts now over the effectiveness of immunity acquired from the infection. The cases are in Belgium and the Netherlands. They follow a similar case in Hong Kong.
Returning from a trip to Spain this month, a 33-year-old man from Hong Kong tested positive for the coronavirus a 2nd time, 4.5 months after recovering from it. Genetic testing showed he'd caught a different strain of the virus, the first ever proof of reinfection. Hong Kong University's medical school says the result suggests immunity can be short-lasting.
This virus is very smart because it keeps on mutating. So that means that even though you have recovered from a natural infection, you still need your vaccination and you still need to wear masks.
The Hong Kong case isn't the only one. A patient in the Netherlands and another in Belgium have also been reinfected. The Belgian woman caught the virus in March and then again in June, and the Dutch patient was an older person with a weak immune system.
Dezelfde opstoot kreeg of dezelfde geval van SARS-coronavirus type 2 had. We hebben dat virus in de 2 gevallen kunnen genetisch determineren.
Scientists say that if you have relatively mild symptoms, your body might not create enough antibodies to prevent reinfection. They're expecting to see more such cases emerge in the coming days.
The Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez says the troops will be made available to help regions overcome a resurgence of the coronavirus. This comes after Spain's worst week for infections since the epidemic's peak in late March. Sánchez added the government would support requests by regional leaders to declare localized states of emergency.
Comunico que el Gobierno de España va a poner a disposición de las comunidades autónomas efectivos de las Fuerzas Armadas para realizar labores de rastreo. Les anuncio que hay 2.000 militares capacitados en técnicas de rastreo a disposición de las comunidades autónomas. Y están a disposición sobre todo de aquellas comunidades autónomas que tengan más dificultad. Podríamos incluso incrementar esta cifra lo que sea necesario a través de la formación urgente que tenemos prevista.
Africa is now free of the disease polio. Poliovirus now joins smallpox on a list of viruses that have been wiped out in Africa, but many victims of polio are left to live, sadly, with the effects of the virus. Poliomyelitis, the medical term for it, is an acutely infectious and contagious virus which attacks the spinal cord and causes irreversible paralysis in children. It was endemic around the world until a vaccine was found in the 1950s. This remained out of reach for many poorer countries in Asia and Africa, but the WHO now says it's eradicated in Africa. Some good news there. Child mental health experts are working with youngsters traumatized by the massive explosion in Beirut. The blast 3 weeks ago destroyed the port. 171 people lost their lives. 6,500 or more were injured. But the physical damage is matched by the psychological effects. France 24's Tamim Al-Katan and Zora Ben Miloud have this.
A few days after the explosion, Hussein started taking part in workshops at a public park in his neighborhood near the port of Beirut. By painting, coloring and clapping hands, workshop organizers hope Hussein and other children will be able to express their emotions.
ما حسيت إنه يمكن عيش خفت على أمي وبي بس دغري تخبرت مع أخواتي خفت أول شغلة على أمي وبي أوقات وقت يخبط الباب بتذكر وبحس مثلا كيف شو صار معنا.
Every day, more than 100 children participate in these workshops organized by UNICEF and Lebanese NGOs. Their aim is to detect symptoms of trauma and determine if any of these children needs individual therapy.
التبول اللا إرادي صعوبة النوم، الأحلام البشعة هيدا بتصير تمتد لأعمار كمان الأكبر. كمان عم نشوف إنه في كتير من الأطفال عم بيعانوا من يعني من نوبات أوقات غضب، نوبات بكي.
According to UNICEF, 100,000 children were affected in different ways by the explosion at the port of Beirut. Half of them now show signs of trauma and need psychosocial support. This is one of Beirut's poorest areas. Lebanon's economic crisis has made people's life more difficult. Hussein takes us to visit his father, who was injured in the blast. Today, he feels desperate.
بس برجع بقول انه حرام هالشيء انه انا افكر فيه، بس تمنيت انه ينزل كان فينا ونروح كلنا ونرتاح، لانه حرام عيشتهم يصيروا مثل ما نحن عايشين.
Fadi's dream today is to leave Lebanon and seek a better future for his children.
A state of emergency has been declared by the governor of the U.S. state of Wisconsin. Authorities in Kenosha are braced for a third night of unrest. Arsonists torched much of the city's black business district following the shooting of Jacob Blake, shot in the back apparently as he tried to get back into his own car. Well, the latest on him is that he's still in hospital. His father says his son is now paralysed. Let's hear from the parents of Jacob Blake.
They shot my son 7 times. 7 times. Like he didn't matter. But my son matters. He's a human being and he matters.
We need healing. As I pray for my son's healing, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, I also have been praying, even before this, for the healing of our country.
So, state of emergency declared in Wisconsin, more unrest expected in the town where Jacob Blake was shot 7 times in the back by police. Meanwhile, at the Republican Party convention, Mike Pompeo is to break with a 75-year tradition and become the first U.S. Secretary of State in living memory to address such a convention. Much of the promised optimistic talk of how a second Trump administration would shape the U.S. has been replaced so far by just warnings of dire consequences if you choose to vote Democrat. Negative campaigning, but Trump fans appear to be lapping it up. Analysts, though, point out there were 100 million people who didn't vote in 2016, Trump making no attempt so far to mobilize these people, preaching instead via his various allies, such as his son here, to the faithful. More on that later. Belarus has jailed 2 protest leaders for 10 days. This as thousands took to the streets to mount another protest against the President Alexander Lukashenko's election victory. His election rival, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, is still in exile, having fled the country, fearing for her life. Protests have been going on in Minsk for nearly 3 weeks, in spite of a violent police crackdown.
The heavens might have opened, but the downpour couldn't shift them. For a 17th consecutive day, thousands stood steadfast in Minsk's Independence Square, refusing to accept Alexander Lukashenko's re-election as their president. Speaking to the European Parliament from her exile in Lithuania, the woman these demonstrators are pinning their hopes on said change has come.
Belarus has woken up. We are not the opposition anymore. We are the majority now. The peaceful revolution is taking place.
She had fresh recruits joining her ranks this Tuesday as teachers protested outside the Education Ministry after Lukashenko said those who've taken part in recent demos should be sacked from schools. But as the anti-government sentiment snowballs, the crackdown on the opposition continues. Olga Kovalkova and Sergei Delusky, both senior figures from the recently formed Coordination Council, have been handed 10-day jail terms, while Belarus's most famous author and Nobel Prize winner Svetlana Alexievich and former culture minister Pavel Letushko have been summoned for questioning.
They don't want for us to be active in our line to have a dialogue between society and the government authorities. So it's demotivation.
A further setback for the opposition came from the Supreme Court, with judges rejecting an appeal to annul the results of the August the 9th presidential election, which Lukashenko claims to have won with 80% of the ballot.
Football superstar Lionel Messi has told Barcelona he wants to leave the club. The Argentinian, it's reported, wants to activate a clause that says he can terminate his contract at the end of the season. It means the six-time Ballon d'Or winner, regarded as one of the all-time greats, could leave on a free transfer. Declan McGarvey's in Buenos Aires. Messi, of course, star of Argentina's national soccer team. Let's go straight to Declan. Any reaction where you are, sir?
Well, it's coming through in the local media here in Buenos Aires. Some of the headlines, the early headlines as this news comes through, is a bombshell out of Catalonia and the end of an era. The Argentinian press are already painting this as the idea that Lionel Messi is bigger than Barcelona, the football club, and that this is going to be bad for Barca and potentially good for Messi. It's, of course, a surprise. It's being called a bombshell. Messi has been at Barcelona since he was a young teenager, 12 or 13 years old. In many ways, in Argentina, he's considered to be more Catalan than he is Argentinian. That's been a frequent criticism levelled at him when he plays for the Argentinian national team. There might be some hopes, remote of course, that he might return home to his homeboy club, his hometown club, Newell's Old Boys in the town of Rosario. But of course, there'll be bigger fish waiting for Messi now, as this transfer might well go through, or that remains to be seen. The local papers here are also talking about lengthy legal action, and of course, whether Lionel Messi is actually playing in terms of the signing of a new contract with Barca.
Declan, any clubs there in Buenos Aires who perhaps could dream of landing a player like that? I'm thinking Boca Juniors, River Plate, perhaps.
Well, from a financial perspective, the single club that would be able to do this might be Boca Juniors, Argentina's biggest, most successful club based in Buenos Aires. It has a history of bringing back Argentinian heroes back to Argentina after careers in Europe. It did it recently with Carlos Tevez and other Argentinian superstars such as Juan Román Riquelme as well, coming back from Europe, and has put them on big contracts with high salaries. It has some financial might. At Messi's age, there may also be a sentimental element to his latest transfer. And of course, as I just said, there will be some Argentinian fans that hopes that he goes back to his hometown of Rosario and signs up for his hometown club, Newell's Old Boys. He played for them in their youth team as a child before going out to Barcelona. But of course, that would appear to be a remote possibility at the moment. The types of Boca Juniors would be competing with Manchester City, PSG, and other big clubs in Europe.
Declan, just thinking, what if Messi bought Newell's Old Boys? That'd be a story, wouldn't it? Thank you, sir, very much indeed for that briefing. Excellent stuff. Declan McGarvey there, joining us from Buenos Aires with the talk there on the streets about Lionel Messi and his decision so far to leave Barcelona. But of course, there's a lot of wrangling to be done before that becomes a done deal. We'll keep you, of course, across all stories as they happen here at France 24. Do stay with us.